Hey folks, I'm back with part 2 of the Meltdown in Europe, prelude to the collapse in the West, and I'm doing part 2 of the intro. Europe's greatest socialist experiment, the EU, is in danger of imploding. This writer's view of the origin and purpose behind the European Union differs somewhat from Gonzalo Lira's view stated in the article below. In this writer's opinion, the EU was a creature of the global socialists who see it as a stepping stone to the New World Order, i.e. to one world government. Over several decades, they sold it as a monetary economic free trade zone, which would strengthen the economies of Europe and make them more competitive with the US and the rest of the world. But this was subterfuge to cover the real goal of the European Union, to establish an all-Europe political union which would ultimately supplant the individual sovereign governments of Europe with a united European Parliament, dictatorship, in Brussels, and a single currency, the euro. And incidentally, this was against the will of most Europeans who never even got to vote for or against this surrender of their sovereignty and freedom. However, a European superstate was in reality only the global socialist's first major step in establishing a world government. The second step was to establish a North American regional superstate, called by the Clintons, Bushes, Obama, and other global socialist comrades the North American Union, and including, for starters, the US, Canada, Mexico, and later Central America. The second regional government, that is what NAFTA was all about. The great majority of the citizens of the US, Canada, and Mexico would never knowingly vote for such a merger. That is what NAFTA was all about. The great majority of the citizens of the US, Canada, and Mexico would never knowingly vote for such a merger. So it must be introduced with stealth and deception, or perhaps in the midst of a financial crisis. The third step in the globalist strategy is the establishment of a Pan-Asian Union made up of most of the key nations in Asia. This will of course be sold as an economic free trade union with a hidden goal of a political superstate in Asia, paralleling the European and American superstates. This, of course, was the goal of the Trilateral Commission, founded in the 1970s by David Rockefeller, Averell Harriman, and Zbigniew Brzezinski, a global one-world government that would emerge from three regional superstates in Europe, North America, and Asia. Indeed, in November, 2 meetings of Asian nations and the U.S. were held in Hawaii and Bali, Indonesia, with U.S. globalists, including President Obama, taking the lead role. However, notably absent was China, which had no intention of being part of a Western-led coalition of states or a global socialist world government. They have their own aspirations for global governance, and those are in conflict with the New World Order. But what if the European Union does implode? The present European crisis would seem to threaten the strategy of the European and global socialists. A cascading series of sovereign defaults around Europe, which could force an exodus of several countries from the European Union and the Euro, could be the beginning of the disintegration of the European superstate and a return to national sovereignty and freedom for a number of these states and tens of millions of Europeans. In one major sense, this would be very welcome and a major setback for the European global socialists. However, a cascading series of sovereign and domestic defaults across Europe could trigger a financial collapse in America, which is in far worse condition than Europe as well. This writer wonders if, out of the coming financial economic holocaust, the global socialists in Europe, the UK, and America will engineer some sort of major power grab As David Rockefeller said in addressing the United Nations General Assembly in 1993, all we need is the right major crisis, and the peoples of the world will gladly embrace the New World Order. Could we be looking at that crisis unfolding in Europe, the UK, and America right now? This writer recently spent 6 weeks traveling in Greece, Belgium, France, the UK, and Switzerland, visiting with a number of leaders in the financial and precious metals businesses. Their conclusions was that the European Union socialist leaders are getting more desperate and more brazen in their people financial control measures, running roughshod over financial privacy, controlling cash and its movements across the borders, strangling Swiss banking privacy with help from their friends in the US government, expanding capital controls at a frightening rate, and imposing more and more controls on the people and businesses reminiscent of Nazi Germany or the former Soviet Union. Strict controls in gold trading have reduced the number of coin dealers in Belgium and other European countries by 80 to 90% over the past couple of years, and a growing number of Europeans as well as Asians and Middle Easterners are moving funds out of Europe and the perceived relative safety of Asia. Editor's note. This writer even more recently visited with a number of financial and business leaders in Singapore and Hong Kong, who confirmed this accelerating trend of flight capital, exiting Europe and the UK and moving to Asia. Conservative money always flees from socialism to a place of greater financial freedom and privacy, often via precious metals and diamonds. And the flight from socialist Europe to free Asia has just begun. For this reason, this writer expects draconian foreign exchange or capital controls to be imposed in Europe very soon, with America not far behind. The world's center of gravity continues to shift from the socialist West to free Asia. A growing number of respected financial writers and analysts, including Jim Rogers, Mark Farber, Simon Black, Frank Seuss, etc., have been echoing what this writer has been seeing and reporting for the past several years. The wave of the future, financially, economically, socially, and politically, is moving away from the wealth-stifling West, i.e. socialist Europe, the UK, and America, to the wealth-producing Asian nations. The former are being strangled by socialist wealth and people controls, bureaucracy, exploding taxes, and an avalanche of business-suppressing regulations. The latter are relatively unfettered by such taxes, regulations, and controls. As the socialist debt-saturated West becomes poorer, the free market Asians, notably including the Chinese, are becoming richer, and they, the people and governments of Asia, are accumulating the gold that the people of the West have been led to believe is a worthless relic of the past. Yes, the global gold balance of power is also shifting to Asia. Editor's note. After spending almost half of this time traveling around Asia the past decade and visiting with hundreds of businesses and financial leaders, politicians and consumers, both rich and poor, this writer is totally convinced that this trend will continue for at least the next few decades, if not for 50 to 100 years. The two articles below by Frank Seuss, a French financial executive and analyst and close friend of this writer, and Gonzalo Lira, are attempting to bring more understanding to the very complex and rapidly moving European financial political crisis, which could be the earthquake that triggers the financial tsunami which will soon inundate America. There, I'm going to call it a night. Next segment will be lost in the Greek of it, the mire of political gibberish and the nonsense of bureaucracy that comes with it. We'll catch you tomorrow, folks. Peace out.